All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program. You know we're talking Johnny Cuba, European roots with that Caribbean soul. Pick up a refreshing German lager in a can. You go to johnnycuba.us. You use the Johnny locator. You find the nearest location to you. Of course, remember, always drink responsibly. And don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Our pal, he joins us every week as CBS Sports Fantasy Football expert Jamey Eisenberg as Week 14 underway. Before we get to the NFL, before we get to the fantasy football, thoughts on the college football playoff rankings that came out a couple nights ago. It's big conversation, of course, down here with the Hurricanes being left out. You got any issues one way or another? You got some strong opinions?
Well, as a Gator fan and living surrounded by a lot of Hurricanes fans, I could be a little petty and say I'm not disappointed that the Hurricanes got left out, and we'll see how that all plays out. But I feel bad for my friends. I'd like to see them get in because it's a fun story and it's fun watching that offense. Just would like to see them obviously fix that defense if they possibly can. Look, it's such a corporate deal, so everybody up in arms about Alabama if they get in. You should know the situation by now. Alabama sells. They're still a draw, even without Nick Saban. So you got to see that side of it, even though they do have 3 losses. But I think by the time we get through the conference championship games, we'll probably have close to the 12 best teams and, or at least a good representation of the 12 best teams. And I think we're all excited to see how this plays out. Is it going to work? Is it going to be what the NCAA intended? That remains to be seen. But I think it's going to be fun to see how it all, ends up.
Do you like the 12 teams? Do you like the new format?
I do. I'm excited to see the tournament style, because I think it's always been, for the most part, the 2 best teams have gotten in, and then the 4 teams, I think they've tried to do the best job, again, taking into account what this is. It's a made for TV event, so it's not always just about which team is playing the best or has the best record. As we saw last year at Florida State, they were not a good draw at the time because of the injuries. So I think they'll put on a good show, and I'm excited to see if we get an upset or 2 along the way.
It's disappointing, obviously, what happened with the Hurricanes, but for me, I equate it to a UFC fight or a boxing fight. You got to finish it on your own. The Canes lost 2 of their last 3 games. They left it in the hands of the judges, and the judges screwed them.
It's a great analogy. I think that it's just to compare it to the NFL, it's like watching the Bengals right now. I've said this a few times about the Hurricanes and the Bengals. You want to see this offense all the time because they can score on you at will, and they can move the ball on you at will. The quarterback is fun to watch. The receivers are fun to watch. The offense in general is just fun to watch, but they can't stop anybody. And so that's came back to bite Miami, unfortunately. And I think that's a lesson to be learned for a lot of teams. Sometimes paying at this stage, for players in college doesn't always, fix your team, so you got to have a good team as opposed to just necessarily an elite player when you want to get the job done.
All right, let's hit a few NFL headlines here. Azeez Al-Shaair, 3-game ban, upheld a couple days ago. Were you surprised with the length of the suspension and that the appeal didn't even shave off a game?
I am surprised that they did not take off a game, especially knowing that it's basically the end of the regular season for the Texans that are still fighting for the AFC South. I think they're still going to end up winning it. But look, the NFL is trying to send a message. When quarterbacks slide, you don't hit them. And, I know it's difficult. You hear a variety, you have heard at this point, a variety of, NFL players. We have guys on our, on our set on CBS Sports HQ, who have played defense in prior rules. Prior regimes, they had different rules. And, the hardest thing to do, I think, is when you're committed to trying to get to the quarterback and they slide, sometimes you can't slow down your momentum. But just the whole thing, the aftermath, the brawl did not help, not that he incited the brawl. It was, the Jaguars teammates sticking up for it. But, the NFL is always about the shield and the image. And, that's not a good look for them right now.
I haven't talked to you since the Thanksgiving games. All right. Happy Thanksgiving. I'm sure you and your family had a great holiday weekend and all that. But you got the Bears. Matt Eberflus gets fired. You're watching the end of that Bears-Lions game. I mean, have you ever seen a coach melt down in a spot like that before?
No. It's funny. It's like you got is the TV frozen? Like he's not moving. Like what? The clock is still going. I don't understand what's happening here. And obviously understanding that Caleb Williams is following the coach's order and the, what's being relayed to him through the, microphone there. So I get that he didn't, take it upon himself to call timeout. But yeah, it honestly felt like, he got the call from above. Hey, we're tanking, lose the game. Like we need the draft pick. And so really it's not just the game, it's how the events afterwards also unfolded, that they let him have the press conference. So I understand, their explanation. It somewhat makes sense, but it's like you sent him out there and made it even worse. Like you just don't know what's happening from top down, so this is going to be a desired job because of the quarterback. It's going to be a desired job.
Right? Like this is a really good job, right?
Yeah, I think if you start to look at the jobs that may become available, I don't know if it's the best because of still being Chicago and they've never had a 4,000-yard passer. We'll see if Caleb gets there. But he's the number 1 overall pick, and he's had some ups and downs, but you see the positives. If they do, clear everybody out, which makes sense, he's going to have 3 offensive coordinators before his next snap, so the next snap of 2025. So it's a weird situation for a young quarterback to be in. So hopefully they make the right hire. You got to get an offensive guy there in place, unless you're going to keep Thomas Brown, who's the current interim head coach, which will probably be very strange if they do that. But he has had a good influence so far on Caleb Williams in the 3 games that he's been calling plays. So that's at least something that you can hang your hat on.
All right, let's get to some games here for this weekend. Dolphins, Jets, 1 p.m. on Sunday. What do we like? The Dolphins looking to get back in the win column.
So Tua Tagovailoa is my start of the week. We try to highlight somebody who's not a slam dunk, easy start in that spot. And, he's been playing great the last 3 games, so it's not always been pretty, garbage time really for the most part against the Packers on that Thanksgiving night game. But he's getting the job done. And you've seen a playmaker emerge in Jonnu Smith, 3 straight games over 21 PPR points. He's been an absolute stud. They're probably not going to have Sauce Gardner, as we're recording this Thursday morning. Gardner did not practice Wednesday, and, they said that they may not play him with the hamstring injury. So you have that at play here, which clearly helps Tyreek Hill and hopefully will help Jalen Waddle, who's been the toughest player to figure out for Miami. But they have three must starts in Tyreek, in Jonnu Smith, and Devon Achane, who's been a superstar. They have a must start quarterback, in my opinion, especially with 6 teams on a bye. And then hopefully Jalen Waddle can at least be a third receiver. He does have, for the first time all season, consecutive games with double digits in PPR, which is a little surprising that it's taken this long to happen. For the Jets, it's really Breece Hall's a must play. And probably with the 6 teams on a bye, you're playing the 2 receivers. Devontae Adams has been out targeting Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson could have had such a monster game against Seattle last week. Aaron Rodgers just missed him on a couple throws. So, I wouldn't panic so much about him. And then Rodgers is just, a disaster at this point. So you got to stay away.
Jaguars and Titans. How are the Jaguars affected by no Trevor Lawrence?
I mean, you've seen it now for the better part of 2 games, or 3 games. 2 of the games, Mac Jones looked, somewhat more competent. I know they got blasted by Detroit in prior to their bye, so week 11, but he at least was able to support his players, and so for fantasy, that's what we're looking for at this point. The running game is a non-factor for me at this point. Travis Etienne's been one of the biggest busts this season, so you're sitting him, you're sitting Tank Bigsby, and I do think Brian Thomas is definitely at play. Again, remember, there's 6 teams on a bye, so it's very hard to find players that are going to be productive. And in the last 2 games with Mac Jones, he's been very productive. If you are desperate, Parker Washington's coming off a positive game. They don't have Gabe Davis, they don't have Christian Kirk, so he's the second receiver now in Jacksonville. And Evan Ingram is a still must-start tight end. I do think this is going to be a good stretch of games for Will Levis. He's been a joke and a punchline for the majority of the season with some of the stupid plays that he's had that have become memes. But he's got 20 fantasy points or more in 3 of his last 4 games. And he gets Jacksonville twice between now and the fantasy championship week. 2 other favorable games between, I don't remember the schedule off the top of my head, I apologize, but there are favorable opponents. And so if you're looking for a streaming quarterback for this week and maybe something sustainable, Will Levis can help you get there. You got a Calvin Ridley revenge game, and Tony Parker should be a must-start running back.
How about the Browns and Steelers? Jameis coming off of almost 500 yards the other night.
Yeah, and so a lot of people are going to look at the last game and say, can you trust it, especially if you're just looking at the stats? That game, if you recall, was in the snow. So Jameis didn't have a great game, only 27 pass attempts in that game. Every other game, he's been 41 or more attempts. And so what the thing you're looking at with Jameis is you got the full experience against the Broncos. You got 497 and 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions and 2 pick sixes. That's Jameis Winston in a nutshell. So he's going to give you a lot of volume, a lot of production. He's going to give his receivers chances to make plays. He's going to make, mistakes. So he is a top 12 quarterback, a number 1 quarterback this week, again, with all the teams on a bye. Don't expect him to be anywhere close to what he was in that game, but he should be around 20 fantasy points, which makes him serviceable. And I do think all the receivers are in play. Jerry Jeudy's been just consistent. We saw the big blowout game against the Broncos, but he's been consistent, 12 or more PPR points in every start with Jameis. Keep an eye on Cedric Tillman's coming through the concussion protocol. We'll see if he plays. The Njoku's been awesome with Jameis, so you're starting him. And Elijah Moore. Every good game that Jameis has had, Moore's been good as well, so not a bad option there. The running backs are probably easy to avoid just because they're facing the Steelers, so Nick Chubb is touchdown dependent right now. And for Pittsburgh, look, last time we saw Russell Wilson, he's coming off a 400-yard game against the Bengals. A lot of that was obviously Cincinnati, but I still think you're looking at Russell Wilson as a borderline starter. Both running backs are in play. Najee Harris having a great season, given the expectations coming into the year. And George Pickens is a must-start wide receiver.
How about the Bears and Niners, and specifically the Niners running game? What are we doing there now?
So it's now Isaac Guerrero. He's the most added player this week, and we'll see how he does. He does have 2 games this season with at least 10 carries. One of those went for 99 yards. It was a 76-yard run to kill the clock that he busted through on a play that Seattle sold out to try and stop him. And then he had 14 carries for 85 yards and a touchdown and 3 catches against the Cowboys. And that's the type of expectation I think you have for him, is 17 to 20 total touches. Can he score? It's kind of been the norm for the 49ers running backs. You're hoping for what Jordan Mason did. Mason was very serviceable to start the season as the McCaffrey replacement. So he's a number 2 running back with the chance to be a top 15 guy weekly. Good matchup this week against Chicago. The best thing for him would be, and really for the 49ers, and this is a team, it's funny. You look at teams and, okay, if you don't have like a rooting interest, they have had some of the more tragic situations for a team this year. You have Ricky Pearsall getting shot at the beginning of the season. Yeah. They've had 2 players lose children. Like, this is awful.
Wow.
One of their members of their secondary, and Trent Williams, their star left tackle, both lost, kids. I think for Williams, it was a stillborn situation. So It's like, you just look at it and you say, okay, you feel for them, so I'd like to see Trent Williams come back. He's battling an ankle injury also. You understand if these guys don't want to play, just given their emotional state, and they are 5-7, but they still have a chance to win a division. So hopefully Brock Purdy can get right. I don't love the setup for him. Deebo Samuel has been a disaster lately, but this is his now time to shine because they'll use him in the backfield as well. George Kittle's a must-start tight end, and Juwan Jennings a borderline starter. For the Bears, Caleb Williams is a decent play just because 30 or more fantasy points in the last 2 games. DJ Moore has become a stud again. Keenan Allen's actually become, very serviceable as well. So you should like those guys also. And this is a good matchup for DeAndre Swift. The 49ers run defense has been bad lately.
All right, give me one more here, Jamey. Sunday night, Chargers and Chiefs. What do we like?
Very excited about this game. First off, keep an eye on Ladd McConkey. The Chargers rookie receivers have an excellent season, excellent stretch of games. So they need him to play. If he's out, I almost hate everything for the Chargers because it would really take anything off of the potential of Justin Herbert. The run game's become a disaster without J.K. Dobbins, who you can make a case was at least the comeback player of the year under the new rules. But he was having an unbelievable season, so he's out for at least the next 3 games. For the Chiefs, look, Mahomes, he's had a bad fantasy season, but he's turned it around since DeAndre Hopkins got there. I don't know if that's the correlation, but at least that's the timing of it. So he's back as a number 1 quarterback. Hopkins is a borderline number 3 receiver. Obviously, you're starting Kelsey. If you're desperate, Noah Gray has got 9 or more PPR points in 3 straight games. He had 4 touchdowns in 2 of those, so he's actually become a legitimate weapon for them. I still don't like the backfield setup for the Chiefs because they're still going to split between Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. But the fact that Pacheco's back, again, 6 teams on a bye, you're starting him over Hunt if you're looking at those 2 running backs.
Excellent job as always, Jamey. Jamey, tell everybody how they can hear you throughout the weekend leading up to all the games.
Fantasy Football Today is our podcast. You can find that on YouTube. You can download it wherever podcasts are available. CBS Sports HQ is our 24-hour streaming network, and we're live 10 a.m. on Sunday, leading you up to kickoff. So getting you set with everything that you need, start, sits, all that stuff. CBS Sports HQ and our Fantasy Football Today podcast, best place to go.
Excellent job, Jamey. Thank you, pal. We'll talk next week. Appreciate you.
You got it, man. You too.